Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of our alumni AMA series, Eat, Sleep, Code, Repeat. We thought it would be a little bit of fun this time around to bring in some of our alumni who are also dads in honor of Father's Day. So to get things started off, I think it'd be great to maybe go around and introduce some of our dads here. So if you can please go ahead and kick us off, Matt, that would be great.
So I'm one of the Learn alumni. I was in Charlie 17. I'm a web developer for RealPage, that was Lease Labs. I'm currently working on different widgets for floor plans. So we're working with multifamily rental companies, and we do their websites. My family is 2 kids, a son Lincoln and a daughter Kara, 8.5 and 5.5, turning 6 in July. So my whole Learn experience was with my 2 kids and my wife. So yeah. That's about the legits for the quick intro.
Well, thank you, Matt. That was awesome. I appreciate you sharing that, and I'll pass it off over to Rob.
So I'm Raul Kaufman. As TJ said, I'm one of the co-founders here at Learn Academy. My wife Chelsea is the CEO, who you'll likely get to meet at some point. And she and I have 2 children, both of which, well, I mean, often we argue we have 3 children, that Learn is the first baby. But both of which were born after we started Learn. So Ruby, who is my daughter, is turning 4 also in July, which is hard to believe. And Oliver, who is 1.5. So we were just about to start introducing him to our family last year when the pandemic hit. So he still has relatives he hasn't met yet, which is just mind-blowing to me. And as CG said, I've been a software developer for quite a while. I started doing some consulting back in 2007 and decided to create a little company called Notch 8 in order to do that. That's about 18 full-time developers now. And Learn split out of Notch 8 at one point back in 2015 when it was first kind of getting off the ground.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Rob. Our last guest just noted he's running a little bit late. He might join us in just a moment. And so we'll get a small intro from him when he pops in. So if you've never done an AMA style event, one of the fun things here is we hope to get some engagement and interaction from you guys. So if you have a question, what's great, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the reactions button in Zoom. So if you have a question, just go ahead, raise your hand. We want to be able to, let you unmute yourself, and interact with everyone. So please don't be afraid to pop in and ask a question. Cool. So we have our last guest joining us here. His name is Guerrero Campos. He was a recent graduate here at Learn. He's now a developer over at Qcentrics. I hate to push you right on the spot, Guerrero, but we're doing some short intros. If you don't mind just kind of giving yourself a little background, maybe who you are, what you're up to now. And then if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about what your family's like.
So I'm actually not Qcentrics anymore, but looking for work right now, but mostly focusing on learning. So right now I'm trying to get some certificates over at Free Code Camp for like responsive web designs and things like that, just to add on to the resume. You said a little bit about my family, TJ. I have 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old and I have a 4-month-old, which is actually why I was a few minutes late. So I was walking her around right now. I completely forgot. And I'm married. I've been married for 2 years. I come from a big family, 10 of us. Yeah, 10 of us. 5 boys, 5 girls.
Big family indeed. Cool. So to kind of kick it off, I know Matt had kind of touched a little bit about it. One of the questions was going to be, did you become a dad, kind of while you were learning to code? So I'll kind of start off with you, Guerrero, if you don't mind. Can you kind of talk about maybe like what was your journey kind of learning how to code, and were you a parent during that time, and maybe what were some of the struggles or some of the rewards during that time?
Yeah. So before I tend to learn, I hadn't touched any code. I've only seen like videos, YouTube tutorials, things like that. And while I was at work, I worked outdoors, so I would just listen to audio of like somebody walking through Python and whatnot. But yeah, I have a 6-year-old, and I had the baby. My baby was born about a week and a half before I started attending Learn. So throughout the entire boot camp, I was just sleepless. She was up all night, and then I would have to wake up the next morning and then drink a lot of coffee, just have enough energy to get through the day. But I mean, surprisingly, like I was able to like absorb a lot of the information and learn a lot, which is great. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of work. It wasn't easy. Like I said, a lot of sleepless nights. I think one of the hardest parts was like any break that I had, whether it's like a 10-minute break or lunch break, was for the baby. Like I was just run upstairs, go take care of the baby, help my wife out, and then run back downstairs onto the computer once the break was done. So yeah, it was a lot of work.
I can only imagine, what it was like doing that while learning how to code. I'm sure that was, like you mentioned, quite an intense time.
Yeah,
Matt, can you kind of maybe share a little bit about what that time was like in your life?
Yeah. So I coded before boot camp, a little bit here and there, PHP, SQL, just dabbling and playing with it. When I started Learn, me and my wife wanted to basically jump into tech, change career. I was working at the airport. I was one of the baggage attendant. I'm the one who just toss your baggage through through all that. And my wife was a movie theater manager at the time. And we had our son Lincoln was about 2 years old when I started. And yeah, Kara came later. Sorry, back that up. Lincoln was 5, Kara was 2. So I had those two, and basically my schedule was working starting at 4 in the morning at the airport, doing 4 to 8:30, running to Learn, doing the full day at Learn. And at that point, my wife was taking twice a week the night classes right after our class. And we would like basically switch cars, say hi, bye. I would get home to the kids, see the kids for about an hour, because they were like in bed by 8. So an hour and a half, and repeat that throughout the week. So yeah, it was a little challenging for those 4 months. But after that, it went pretty good. So happy to have done it. The kids are also happy that we're happy. So so yeah, a little tough time there, but so worth it.
And Rob, I know you. If I remember right, I don't believe you had children while you were learning how to code. But maybe talk about what it was like balancing both businesses. I'm sure that was insane.
Well, we'd gotten Learn to a place where it was kind of stable-ish, and Notch 8 had been pretty well established. And one of the things I was really clear with at the time was that I was going to take a month of paternity leave. Chelsea was going to take 3 months of maternity leave, and the companies were either going to survive or not, based on that. And I remember saying at the time, like, don't call me unless it's on fire, and if it's on fire, take pictures for the insurance, right? Like we are going to be able to do this time. And we really did get that with Ruby in a good way. And we got the month in with Oliver. Unfortunately, Chelsea did not get her entire maternity leave simply because like taking the company from being in person to remote was a very serious thing for us. Like we weren't going to just be like, well, whatever, like we'll just take it online. Like we wanted to make sure that the students felt supported, that they had everything they needed. We didn't want it to be an online class because online classes aren't great, right? Like I bet many of you have tried to learn online by yourself and it's really hard. And so we wanted to model it after remote work more than after like online classes. And so like doing that right and taking, you know, both all of the administration for the company virtual, but then also the classroom and getting that real like concrete virtual environment needed a lot of kind of all hands on deck time. So during the first like month or so of the pandemic, Chelsea, like we were up all night with the baby, like Guerrero was talking about. And then I would work for an hour and just get everybody started on the day. And then I would watch the kids for a couple hours and Chelsea would do some work. And then we would tackle nap time together. And then I would work for a few hours in the afternoon and we would do like, then she'd have 1 hour at the end of the day to wrap up everything. And then we would do dinner and bedtime. And then I would go back in and work for another 4 hours. And so like that was not something I would repeat optionally, right? Like I think that it was, but you know, the kids got what they needed, and it was good. We made it through, and they still crash meetings all the time. Like I'm surprised I haven't heard little feet because especially about 5:30, they think that dad should be done, and they don't really care if I'm doing an event or something, and so they usually barge into my office.
Well, it seems like balance is definitely the key between all three of you guys. From what I've heard, is and it seems like you all have a really good team at home. So I know I just got married. I know it's been, you know, a team is a great backbone of a family. So I'd like to kind of start opening up to any questions around the room. So if you please, if you have any questions, could be about anything, could be about the program, could be about Learn, could be about job prospects, could be about maybe where to get started. I know we have a few individuals from our current class. So please don't be shy to raise your hand or unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
I have a question for Matt.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Just because I think you had said that you and your wife was attending the night classes, so as soon as you got off, she went in. How much planning went into that before you guys decided to like attend Learn?
So at first she was the one who's going to take the coding class. And I was kind of like, no, I kind of want to do that too. So she couldn't just leave her day job. So that was gearing towards more night classes and online classes kind of thing. So it kind of was a natural thinking that she would do the night classes and I would attend the full-time day class. But yeah, it took about a month to like really decide how we're gonna do it. And I've got to say, I've got a great mother-in-law that was with us also at the time, and she was in between the whole chaos, and that was also a great support for that. So kudos to her too.
Cool. So if you have any other questions, just go ahead and, you can also drop it in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable, mute yourself. That's also another good way. But to kind of keep it moving, one of the interesting things is, always where you kind of got the interest of learning how to code. So maybe I'll start with Rob on, was coding something that ran in your family, or is that something you kind of just self-decided to learn, or did you maybe learn that from your dad?
That's a good leading question, TJ. So I talk all the time about how I'm a second generation software developer. My dad was a developer for NASA from the time he was 19 as an academic part-time, or what we would call an intern. at JPL up in Pasadena to the time he retired at 50 years in. And so, sorry, 49 years in. He's very specific about the fact that he was only there for 49 years. So I knew a lot about what being a software developer was like growing up, which was a huge advantage, right? Like one of the things that I know is that I knew what I wanted to do really young. And so that was a big head start for me, fundamentally. That doesn't mean that other people can't come to that later and still get where they want to go. I think that that's absolutely true. But I get that that's, it's sort of a different, we come to things at different times, right? So at the end of the day, I think it says in my bio that I started pair programming when I was 2, because I would sneak out from nap time and hang out with my dad until mom caught us. And then I get in trouble and have to go back to nap time. But like I had a lot of opportunity and like that was available for me. Now I will say when I went to school, there was like no programming in like junior high or high school. That was not a thing at all, which is something that's much more available these days. So, I definitely felt like I had a big leg up there.
Yeah, I do. I will admit, I always enjoy hearing that story. So it's always cool to hear. I know Guerrero and Matt, I know you guys come from more career kind of transition backgrounds. Where was it where you guys kind of got your interest in coding? Was it like, was it your friend? I think Matt, you mentioned it was your wife, maybe, if you want to get started.
So when I was in Paris, when I was living in Paris, I think I was like around 11. I got my first computer and there was some basics class that I took. And it was basically trying to create Arkanoid. So I don't know if you guys know what Arkanoid was. It's basically a brick, like blasting bricks with just a slider and a ball. So we were trying that and it was fun. Got me kind of slightly hooked. And by 2000, I created my first pro website for the Paris French swimming committee. And that was in tables. So that was fun. So basically since 2000, I've been kind of on and off with programming. But yeah, my dad was a soccer player, musician, and my mom was a swim coach. So
Yeah, didn't necessarily run in the family, but was there a kind of a moment where it kind of pushed you to do it maybe professionally and beyond just, kind of as a small hobby?
I mean, that was when we were trying to change careers, and it was just I've been doing this for a while, like as a hobby. How about I just do it? And that's when it clicked, and yeah.
Very cool. And Guerrero, would you mind just kind of touching a little bit on, kind of what sparked your interest in coding? How did you get started?
As far as like for coding, I don't know, like I've always liked working with computers. I'm actually into music production as well. Like I like producing music. So like I like all that technical stuff. Like I don't know, I just enjoy it. But I think the first time I learned about coding, because I'd never heard about it before or anything like that, was like one of those ITT Tech commercials, and I was like, oh, that sounds all right, but I don't know if I want to do that, And then just like those ads you see, I saw one a few years ago about web development, and it got me super interested. Then I looked into it, but I couldn't. It just wasn't the time for me, just because I had responsibilities and whatnot. I had a full-time job, so that was definitely something that set me back a few years. Just trying to figure out, okay, when is a good time? How should I do this? Saving up the money and all that stuff. But then again, I just had the baby. When I realized I was having the baby, it's sort of weird because like, yeah, it was stress. This was a stressful time, but I would do it again just because it was kind of one of those like blessings. I don't want to say blessing in disguise, but like, with all that stress, like at the end of it all, like I was able to quit my job and actually change careers. And if I didn't have the baby, I don't know when I would, or even if I would have been able to do that, just because I was holding back on it for so long. But again, as far as what got me into coding, I would say just seeing it online. I don't know. No one in my family does anything in software engineering or anything like that. I've been trying to get my brothers and sisters to get into it. No luck so far, but yeah, just online.
Well, that's a really cool way how it kind of all played together like that. Raul, I see you have a question there. Please go ahead. I think you should be able to unmute yourself. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So, quick question on those who have been developing already. What would you say, or what would be your take on, like, work-life balance? Is it more company specific, or is it, as a developer as a whole, is it, tilt more towards work, or is it kind of balanced? Or I don't know if you could just I don't know, give any tips or what your experiences are in that realm.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody want to kick us off? I see Matt. Maybe you want to jump in, or Rob, one of the two.
I think there's a lot of different kinds of companies, right? What I hear from really young people that want to start software development is they all want to go be video game developers. And the thing about video game development is it's like the salt mines of the software industry. And it tends to be like this sort of grindy, we've seen in the last few years, video game development companies getting in trouble for abusing their workers and that kind of thing. And that's not everybody, right? But there's definitely that culture there. And there's some startups that are like, everybody's all in all the time, and we're gonna live and sleep and eat here, and we're never going anywhere else. And like that's definitely out there. But the majority of software development, the thing about it is it's such a team sport in a lot of ways, right? And that burnout is really easy in our industry. And so we have a lot of stuff, and it's expensive, right? Like your top performing software developers, if they start to get burned out, now all of a sudden, they're maybe 1/10 or 1/100th as productive as they were before. And so there's a lot in the industry to try and help with that. So most companies are pretty responsible and pretty reasonable. The other thing is there's so much demand that it puts a lot of pressure on companies, right? Like if I burn out one of my devs at Notch 8 and they decide to go somewhere else, like that probably cost me $20,000 or $30,000, right? And I have to meet someone new, which I don't really want to do. I like working with the people that I work with right now, right? And so often, like there's a lot of pressure to like keep that balance healthy and make it really, really work. The other thing that's interesting about software development from a work-life balance standpoint is you don't have to do the 9 to 5 once you have a little bit of experience, right? Like there's a lot of consulting, there's a lot of gig opportunities. We have one of the folks who comes into the classroom role frequently, his name is Ben Wanneker. You ask him, he'll tell you he's a professional musician. He does software on the side. Now, which of those pays his rents? I can tell you it's probably not being a professional upright bass player. But like that is where his like primary passion is. And he's able to do that and still kind of keep up with, maybe working 20, 25 hours a week, 30 hours a week, and really make that work well. And we've seen that folks, especially after a year or two, can really like live that life.
Yeah, I'm lucky to be in a company that allows us to work whenever we want. So after several years at the airport, I'm basically wake up super early. So I would like start at 4 and end by noon. And that way I can take care of the kids. Like I can pick them up from school. I can like do stuff during the day while my wife finishes work, and that allows us to like have dinner, put the kids to bed, and things like that. But yeah, it's having a company that allows you to set up your priorities. But you also have to know your priorities and be like, okay, for this is my priority. Now this is my priority. But yeah, it's finding that where you know what you want and you go for it.
And Guerrero, do you have anything to add about that? Was there, maybe any benefits of kind of the work-life balance of being, getting into the developer position that you started to see? I know you're just getting out of the job search.
Yeah. When I was at Qcentrics, I loved it, man. It was just getting to work from home. It doesn't even feel like you're working. You can go down for a cup of, soda or juice, whatever you want to do, and then just come right back up. Um, yeah, there's a lot of meetings, but overall though, it's well balanced. Like I said, it was um, definitely help with the stress. Just being able to get up and just take a break whenever you feel, not whenever you feel like it, but if you need one, you're free to just walk up and just take a 10-minute break. So yeah, it's definitely that balance there. Um, and then also, yeah, like Matt was saying, the time wise, uh, a lot of companies are, they just, as long as you get those 8 hours in and you put that work in, they're fine with whatever time you're working. So it's pretty easy to balance.
Do you have any follow-up you want to add to that, Raul, or any other questions?
No, I'm pretty sure I have more questions, but I'll spread them out.
Excellent. Thank you. And everyone as well, the floor is yours. So please, if you have anything burning on your mind, don't be afraid to either put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll get to that. But to keep it moving, I think that kind of brought up a few points to add. A lot of the people here are, incoming students, or at least thinking about joining the upcoming cohort. What is some advice you would give to some of the incoming students? Like, what are some of the things that they should either be thinking about, being prepared for? Anything along that line. I'll start off with maybe Matt.
Just know that at one point you're going to hit a wall and you're going to pass it. Just know that there's a wall coming, you're going to hit it, and you're just going to go through it. I think it happens to like any alumni at some point. Sometime it's early, sometime it's late, but there's a point where you're like, I don't think I can. I don't think I can. And there's always somebody who's like, yes, you can. And you'll do it. We'll go through it, and you're going to pass that wall. And after that, you're going to be like, oh my God, this is great. This is the best thing. And yeah, I was glad there was people for me when I hit that wall and was like, my brain can't take it anymore. But you're going to have fun. It's a really, really, really nice road.
And when you say wall, Matt, if you don't mind me picking on that, can you kind of maybe just elaborate on that a little bit? Is it, is it the amount of information that's coming in so quickly? Is it maybe the concepts that kind of get a little challenging?
To me, it was like a language barrier. So we were doing Ruby, and for me, it was like, I can read it, I can't write it. And I got frustrated because I couldn't make it work. And I had some alumni from the basically Bravo class that was like, no, it happens to everybody. Just do your best, let it roll. At one point it's gonna click. And it did. And after that conversation, I was just like, I'm going to like challenge by challenge. I can do it, great. I can't, I'll do my best to understand it. And I'm gonna just go there. I'm not gonna force myself to absolutely finish that challenge. I'm gonna go to the point where it doesn't work anymore, but I'm going to try to understand why it doesn't work and what I did before that. And from that point on, the class was just like, it was just like weight lifted from my shoulders.
Well, once you get over the wall, it sounds like easy street. Rob, is there anything you would like to, any advice you have for maybe incoming students or anybody interested?
I think that one of the things we talk about a lot is that there's some like basic study habits that not all of us have. I was a particularly bad student in like junior high and high school. I was mostly just messing around and passing time. And so like there are some, like if you don't feel like you know how to take good notes, if you don't feel like you um, have a lot of experience in like being pushed or feeling that pressure of something that's really hard, that's totally okay, but it is worth taking a little time to work on that. And the reverse is true too. Like there's this feeling in school like you can't raise your hand unless you already know the answer. And programming just isn't like that. Like everything is very open-ended. We don't do any closed book exams because that's not what working is like, right? Like no one's going to be like, oh, you could have looked that up and saved 5 minutes, but unless you have it memorized, like we don't want to talk to you. Like that's just not how programming is done. You spend a lot of time reading, a lot of time looking things up, a lot of time Googling around, trying to find other people's solutions. And so like we want you to be versed in that in the classroom. So it can be a little jarring for folks that were really great at school and really great at studying because they feel like they have to know everything before the class day starts. And you'll drive yourself totally to exhaustion trying to do that and learn. It's just like, that's not how this kind of learning goes. It's very much a like, okay, those words are words the first time. And then when we go over to second time, it's like, okay, those words have some sort of meaning now. And then it's the third or fourth time when they start to actually click together, and that can be really uncomfortable for folks in the beginning. But if you lean into that a little bit, you can find that it starts to really come more naturally. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome, like that feeling like you don't belong. I remember probably the third or fourth class, I was sitting eating my lunch one day and some students were talking like in a room right next to me. And one of them goes, I just keep waiting for Rob or somebody to come and tap me on the shoulder and tell me I don't belong and that I need to leave. Right. And I think there are a lot of days at Learn that feel that way. And I'm a jerk. Like I waited about 3 or 4 hours and walked over to him and tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, can we go for a walk, and talked through those feelings and talked about why that it wasn't going to happen and wasn't going to be a thing that, was going to be a real thing. And he told me at the end of it, he's like, I was sure you were going to tell me that you were kicking me out of the class. I'm like, no, like that's not what this is about. Like this is about a journey together that we're undertaking, and it's hard. Like we call it a boot camp for a reason, but it's very much a thing that we get through together at this point over and over and over again, right? Like we're 400 some odd students in, and like we know that it's for you, it's still your first time, and that's hard.
That's awesome. Thank you, Rob. I will add, we are actually close to 500 now. So we are jumping up the ladder. Guerrero,
because I would normally be like, oh, we're 500 plus students and we're not quite at 500 yet. And so Chelsea gives me crap all the time for rounding up. I've been known to tell people that there are about 20 developers at Notch 8. There are 17, just in case anyone's carefully counting, and then one administrator. Right. So like I just get in trouble for rounding up all the time. And for once I wasn't doing it, and then TJ is going to give me crap for that.
my bad. Guerrero, just to kind of round this out, one of the things, you actually went through our remote program. So, kind of looking at it from, the remote perspective, is there any advice you might give to somebody who's coming into our remote program?
Yeah, I was going to say, just try to build connection with your peers, because I know it's gonna be a lot harder doing it remotely and not in person, but it's gonna help you because you're gonna have somebody to talk to on those days, like Rob and Matt said, where you feel like you don't belong or you're not understanding it. You're not gonna be the only one. So it helps building those connections and having people to talk to, and so you just kind of vent. It's a little therapeutic. Just like I said, you guys are both going through it, so it helps having people to talk to, and then having them, just kind of pick you back up.
Awesome. Now, Austin actually had a question here, and I'm gonna start with you, Rob, because on the hiring side, I think this could be some good input. Developers, kind of have maybe they might have the perception that they do have flexibility and kind of hop around from positions in companies a lot. So Austin kind of said it seems pretty common that developers, don't stay much longer than maybe 2 years or so at a given company and kind of work their way around. Do you kind of see that perception?
I think that that's indicative of any market where there's a lot of competition. And fundamentally, yes and no, right? Like there are definitely lifers at various companies. I work with a lot with universities, right? And there are folks that have been working at the library software development group. So it's a group of software developers attached to the library at Yale, and that they'll start there right out of college and stay until retirement, right? Like that's still pretty common. And they're just, really comfortable there. They like the culture, they like the benefits package. They're not really aggressively managing their careers. I do think software development has attracted a lot of folks that are really aggressively managing their careers, and those folks tend to move around a lot more. And there's lots of opportunities, right? Like I get probably 50 or 60 recruiter touch bases in a given week, which is a lot of opportunities. And so, that certainly creates churn fundamentally. Let's see, Notch 8, I think the dev with the most tenure is Steven, who's been with us since 2015. And part of that is we didn't expand the Notch 8 team much until 2012. And we had a Portland office and everyone was attached to the Portland office, and we decided to close that office at some point as people moved on. So it's not everybody that's moving around all the time, but it's definitely there is a lot of opportunity to do so.
And I think on the converse of that, if you don't mind me kind of picking, like, do you see a lot of growth opportunities for developers to stay at one company, or do you think a lot of companies offer that kind of growth for developers?
Well, more and more we are, right? Like I think at Notch 8, we very much foster this like long-term team mentality that is really important to me. And I'm seeing more and more companies like really embrace that. Software developers aren't interchangeable by any stretch of the imagination, and that the cost of hiring just keeps going up and up and up. And so that motivates folks to really, make changes. But it's silly things like, right now, if we had done just typical like 4 or 5% raises every year for our team, which is not how we run things, then you could probably, Steven, for example, specifically, if I put him on 5% raises max from the time he started with us until now, he would be able to probably quadruple his salary by going somewhere else. So yeah, if you do that to people, you know what they're going to do? They're going to leave, right? Like, because if someone's going to pay you 4 times as much as you're making now, it kind of doesn't matter how much you like your boss. You're going to just bail, right? Like 4 times is a lot. And so, you have to pay attention to those kinds of things. And not everybody will ask, right? Like there are folks that are in my office every quarter asking for performance reviews, asking how to get the next raise, like pushing that forward. And then there are folks like I have one employee who basically runs and hides from me if I want to talk about money. Like she just does not want to. It's just that conversation she has no interest in. And so like we've done things like we do salary transparency. Like we have salaries attached to each of the various levels of our organization. So apprentice, junior 1, junior 2, mid 1, mid 2, senior 1, senior 2, lead 1, lead 2. And that's published, right? Like every employee at the company knows how much a mid 2 makes. And we do that in order to try and get some equity and equality and build that into the system. Because otherwise it ends up with this sort of unevenness that may not have anything to do with performance. It may just have to do with persistence.
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, having that ability to grow and keep talent around is definitely a benefit for software developers. Matt, kind of going off of that, could you give kind of an idea of maybe what your career kind of arc has kind of looked like? Have you kind of gone from company to company, or have you been pretty steady, with Lease Labs?
I've been steady with Lease Labs since I got the job. So yeah, it's been 3 years now. I started with the Ruby on Rails part of Lease Labs, and now I'm more towards the JavaScript Vue widget part of RealPage. So yeah, it's been steady. But for me right now, it's also what are we doing family wise, where we want to go family wise. And to us, it's going back to France. So now it's starting to be like, okay, let's look at French companies and things like that. So it's gearing more towards that than seeing what's out there. And yes, the salary is definitely better out there, but it's also what you lose. You don't necessarily know what you're gaining. So
Cool. And as we round out this question, if anybody has any others, just please go ahead and we can get you queued up here in a moment. But Guerrero, I know you're kind of just starting out in your career arc. Do you have any ideas on, is there a specific part of coding that really has interested you since you started graduation?
So I say backend stuff, working with databases. Probably interests me the most. I've actually started to learn about how some companies I don't know how to say it. I was learning how to make money off of building databases and stuff like that for people. That interests me a lot, just because for me it's pretty easy, and it's fun too. So I would say that's kind of the side that I lean towards the most.
Great, thank you. I'm going to pick up on Sarah's question, which I think is awesome. It's always funny to see that meme, what people think I do, what I actually do. So I'd like to get your thought, what is your kids, your family, what do they think you do? And, do they have any interest in the dev work that you do, or do you plan on maybe, exposing that to them? I'll go ahead, I'll start with you, Guerrero.
Okay, good. Yeah. Mine's funny. Yeah, my 6-year-old son thinks I'm a hacker. So he thinks I'm hacking all day, and he wants me to hack his video games and give him a bunch of free things on there and whatnot. And then his cousin also thinks I'm a hacker. He's about 9 or 10. So that's what they think I do, even though I've explained it to them. And yeah, I definitely plan on showing him about software development. He seems pretty interested because he'll sit on my lap, or he has his bed right behind. I built my office in his room, so he'll lay down, sit down next to me, and just kind of watch what I'm doing. So he seems pretty interested in that stuff, and he likes learning as well. He's really smart, and he's in kindergarten and he knows his multiplications. So he loves to learn. So yeah, I definitely plan on showing him more about software development and whatnot.
Awesome. Hacker dad.
Yeah.
Rob, how about you? What are your plans, or have the kids started to sit on your lap like you did?
So I've definitely I actually had Oliver in the carrier, in meetings and stuff quite a bit early days. But when you ask Ruby what she wants to do, how do you make money, she tells you that you type on a computer all day. That's how you make money. And then she'll get her little Leapfrog laptop, and she'll be like this, Dad, this is what you do all day, and just tap on all the keys. So the fact that I'm making computer programs hasn't really sunk in, but she and I did put a Raspberry Pi together the other day, which was really fun thing to do together. And Oliver's still more in the like, no, please don't pull that off the table and destroy it phase. But he'll get there. I have a bunch of decoy toys on my desk. So I have like, fidget spinners and like stress things. And like this is a case for iPods or AirPods. And so when they come in, I'm usually like, oh, here, take this like dead keyboard that I have and play with that. Or, like, so it's sort of like got to deploy my decoys to keep them from getting onto my laptop.
And how about you, Matt? I know your kids are getting a little bit older. They started to get an interest in coding.
Yeah, through us, like there was a couple coding website that we used for Lincoln. And school also provided like a couple websites. So he started to like code. I wouldn't say he's like super invested in coding. But he liked it and was like, yeah, look, I make this and I made this do this. And I'm like, yay. As far as knowing what we do, they know I make websites. And that mommy is on calls all day. But yeah.
Well, that's all awesome stuff. Austin, I believe you had a question. Please go ahead if you want to unmute yourself and ask what.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Cool. So I'm in the midst of a career pivot. My wife and I had a daughter last year. And I basically spent the last decade or more as an audio engineer, doing like live concert production. And so after having our daughter, I kind of decided that I needed to figure out a way to not have to rely on traveling and basically being gone and doing these tours for 10 months out of the year. So in my career, I went pretty far. I was very successful. I, did big arena tours, worked with big famous bands, won like lots of awards. And in my world, I was kind of a big deal. And I'm learning and I'm being very humbled by just sort of realizing that none of that really carries over to tech world. Like a lot of these people that I speak with don't really care about that stuff as much. So I've been trying to come up with ways to sort of market myself and be able to go to an employer and kind of be able to explain that I've accomplished a lot and have a lot of value to bring, like outside of the technical side of it, which is what I'm developing and working on learning and getting better at. So yeah, I'm kind of just trying to figure out a good way to communicate that I can bring all of these other really great like communication and leadership and team building and those kind of skills that I think are still really important for a lot of jobs. But I'm still like working on getting my technical skills built up. I'm just trying to come up with a way to sort of present myself in doing that. And I'm just wondering if you guys have any words on that.
Thank you, Austin. Yeah, that's a really good question. We've worked with a lot of people here at Learn who are coming from a very similar background and doing a complete career pivot. And, we really help you kind of discover what that branding looks like. Rob, I think this might be a good question for you. Do you have any ideas on like, what do we do at Learn to really help people tap into that previous background they have in making this career pivot?
I mean, there's always something, right? Like that you're drawing from. One of the things I hear from you is that you're used to working tight deadlines and with like complex teams, and maybe managing the occasional prima donna's expectations. Right, like those are things that are valuable when dealing with clients or upper management. And so like understanding that you're gonna know a lot about like I said before, like software development is a team sport. A lot of people have this like apparently Guerrero's kids mindset of like what being a software developer is. It's like, you know, this person probably looks a lot like me in his mom's basement in the middle of the night with the hood up on the hoodie, right? And it's not like that. That's not what we do. And so there's a lot of team skills that are really important. So reframing your existing experiences, having experience, knowing about working with a diverse team on tight deadlines and understanding the way to manage client expectations, like those things are really important pieces to the sort of software developer background. The other thing is I would assume in your previous career that there are a lot of sort of unmanageable things. Like you don't always know how long it's going to take to process a sound sample or like how much work is going to go into it. And so talking about your experience with estimation and being able to like, talk about how you've got some idea of how to express the amount of time an unknown thing might take. That you probably have experience with the 80-20 rule, right? Like at some point you have to call that thing good enough and you could theoretically go further, but that might not be the right choice, especially if you're talking about live performances. Like you've got to move it along, right? And so you can't just take infinite amount of time to set something up. So those are the kinds of things that I would bring into the equation in a big way when you're talking about like what your value is on a team. And here's the bottom line: there are going to be folks that don't get it, right? There are software developers out there with their masters in computer science, right, that think that if you don't have 6 years of formal education in programming, you're not going to be a good software developer. And they only hire interns directly out of UC Irvine, and they don't want to talk to anybody else. Those organizations exist, right? But more and more folks that don't, and there's still this huge cadre of people that never had any kind of formal education, right? Like a lot of software developers in the 90s are self-taught. Early 2000s, there's a lot of self-taught folks out there. And so like they're going to think, oh, well, you went to a boot camp, like you're not self-taught. So, but more and more this like boot camp approach is becoming the established. It's becoming the majority, right? And the folks that get it really get it. When I talk to other consultancy owners, there's a moment when they realize that I run this software consultancy and I run a code school, and like the light bulb goes off in their heads and they go, oh, I see what you're doing there, right? Like that means you get to cherry pick the best talent that comes out of the code school. I'm like, yes, that's something I've thought of, right? Like that is a real thing that really happens. And I'm completely unabashed about it, right? We drive the curriculum at Learn to be useful to Notch 8. Right? Now, does that have a nice side effect of meaning that the curriculum at Learn turns out to be useful to the industry as a whole and stays really fresh because we're constantly refining it? Yeah, absolutely. So it's good for the students. And is it secretly extra good for me? Sure, it is. Absolutely. And I don't make any like hay about that. Like that's a real thing. So those people that get it are really going to get it. Is it 100% of everybody? No. But these days it's the majority, right? When we were first starting back in 2015, like hiring bootcamp grads was definitely in the minority of companies. I know that famously, the HR folks at Intuit would always be like, "Well, we don't hire bootcamp grads; we only hire CS grads." And they kept telling me that every time I would talk to them. And then one time I went and talked to them. I'm like, "Well, there's 6 of them working in your advanced R&D department. Did you guys not get the memo on that?" Like I could tell you their names. And sure enough, that department decided that in order to get the kind of talent that they really needed, that they had to expand their scope, got special permission from the head of HR to hire the people they actually wanted to hire. And now Intuit more and more is being open to a broader hiring pool, right? Like that experiment was seen to be so successful that it sort of cracked this like ironclad, we only do this kind of approach. So it's changing. Will you probably have run into somebody who says no because of it? Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Rob. And I think what's really cool is coming from Matt, also from Matt and Guerrero, is both of you guys have come from a position of, have that career pivot. You guys have any advice maybe for Austin on how he's kind of, what is the word? Like kind of creating that transition, like framing it for himself. Like, do you have any advice for him? I'll start with Matt, if you don't mind.
I mean, it's Rob nailed it. Is just trying to find what in your past career can apply to the position you're applying to, or like what makes them tick that you have because of your past work. And I can tell you that coming from the airline, it was like everybody was kind of like shutting the door, but like, yeah, no, yeah, no, yeah, no. And it was like, no, like this is what I bring. I know how to do a tight deadline. I know how to work with a team to make that tight deadline. Because when you've got a plane that needs to live on time, like you've got to do it. And putting that extra mile and expectations and things like that. So it's really trying to extrapolate all your past experience into that job seeking, and it's just tailoring to that company of like, oh, you want something that's tight with deadline or tight with like a team. This is what I did. This is how I can do it, and this is how I can apply this to your company.
Great. And Guerrero, do you have anything that maybe you leverage from your past experiences that have been beneficial to where you are now?
Just those soft skills that Austin was talking about, just own them. And if that's what you can bring at the moment, just like I said, just put it out there, own it. As far as the technical stuff, they tell you this in the boot camp, but you're never gonna know everything just because it's constantly evolving. So just as long as you know the basics. I see in a lot of job posts, I see a lot of companies look for potential. So they look for, okay, let me see where you can be in, 1 to 2 years. So that's, another thing to look forward to is also don't be worried too much about the technical stuff. Definitely show them that you have potential. That's probably the biggest thing. And yeah, just owning whatever you're really good at and shining in those areas is always good.
Cool. That was really helpful.
I don't come
Thanks.
from like live audio, but like I said, I produce music, Austin. So like my angle is to help produce music software. So I would love to work for like FL Studios or Splice or something like that down the line. But yeah. The cool thing too is because you have like no matter what background you come from, and I learned this, like any industry has software developers, which is really cool. So like I said, like I'm trying to stay in the music scene, so I've applied to like just like whatever I have in front of me. I have this MPK mini keyboard. Like I went on there and they have job postings for software developers, and the questions they ask are so funny. It's like, oh, who's your favorite artist, this and that. So I mean, it's definitely, like I said, you can definitely find software work coming from your background. But yeah, just owning whatever it is you're good at and whatever you have to offer at the moment.
Well, you all made some really good points. I appreciate that. I hope that answered your question in full, Austin.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you guys. That was really helpful.
All right. I'd love to pass the torch off to Raul. You have another question, please go ahead.
All right, so I guess my question would be more in lines of like, I kind of wish I knew this before I started coding. Like, what are some things like you should maybe some expectations, or like, hey, these are some things that myths that, like, I don't know, kind of how like you guys were saying like, oh, it's a hacker, but what are some like, I guess things like you wish you knew before you started walking down this path that could help somebody who's walking down that path right now?
In the summer between 8th grade and freshman year of high school, my mom made me take a speed reading class, and I went kicking and screaming. Like I did not want to do summer school. Like I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. And that speed reading class is probably one of the most useful day-to-day things that I use it every single day. And so I try to remember to give her credit whenever possible, because I definitely did not want to do it, right? But you will spend a lot of time reading as a software developer, right? Like we talk about the discipline of writing code all the time, right? But we'll spend a lot of time reading. There are days I'll spend 2 days, 3 days just reading code, doing little experiments, never write a single line of code that I'm going to keep. Ultimately, change one word somewhere and fix a bug that's been plaguing a system for a year, right? Or improve the performance on something 300 times, right? So, like, especially early days, you'll write a lot of code, but take the time to read a lot of code too. Like, get comfortable with doing that because it's a big part of the discipline. And so, I really think that that's a really valuable thing to just kind of know ahead of time, and then not, like I said, we all think of it as it's writing code, right. But figure out what you're going to do, like take time to break the problem down, and then use that as your starting point. And don't be afraid to spend a bunch of time reading, because that's a big part of what this is about.
Matt, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah. Yeah, take your time. Like, don't rush things. Even if people are telling you, like, we need that, just take your time, understand the problem, and walk through it. And the time that you're spending understanding the code and reading that code, knowing that code, will pay back later on, because it's one bug now, but you'll have another bug later and another bug later, and you'll know exactly where it is and what's happening. And it's that, and focus on what you know. Don't focus on what you don't know. Focus on what you know with that code. And also that will help you to just piece the puzzle together. Because when you do a puzzle, you don't focus on, hey, that piece I know, like you focus on the borders, and after that it's kind of like, well, what's going on? So you focus on like that piece that you know, and you build the puzzle. You don't be like, oh, I'm gonna start in the middle of that puzzle. Where are the pieces? So, yeah.
For me, I don't know what to say. Like I said, I didn't touch any code until we did there's like a jumpstart class that they do before the actual cohort. Before that, I hadn't touched any code at all. If I can go back, I still wouldn't touch any code, just because for me it was more beneficial. Like, I was able to pay attention the whole time instead of just being like, oh, the basic stuff I already learned this, so I'll just kind of look away, do something else in the meantime, and possibly miss something. I was just like focused. Not the whole time, because I would joke around in class a lot, but I was really actually like absorbing things and paying more attention than I probably would have if I would have. I don't know what I'm saying, but I don't know. For me, like, I guess it worked for me, but everybody's different.
Yeah, we do have one special guest here with us, Sarah, our instructor. I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have any advice for anybody just getting started into coding?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I can back up Guerrero's claim of being the class clown. He always brought the humor. I mean, just getting excited about this journey. It's settling into a path of being a lifelong learner, and so we're so much more worried about making sure that you as a person understand your learning style and understand how you absorb information, and then being able to do that efficiently, because that's going to get you so much farther than like, oh, I memorized this set of syntax. Like, cool, that will get you a certain ways down the road, but it definitely has its limitations. And so when I see people that are really excited about the process and are excited about learning and excited about the struggle and can't let go of the thing that doesn't work and just like want to keep pressing forward and make it work, and like, but what about this? Why is this happening? I fixed it, but I still don't even understand why I fixed it. Can you explain why the code works and then why it doesn't work? Like, those are all really good questions that I'm really excited to hear as an instructor, because that to me, it feels like the student is passionate about the learning experience and not just trying to like click the buttons in order to get to the next thing.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate putting on the quick spot. Yan, Chris, if you guys have any questions, please don't be afraid to reach out in chat. We'd love to answer anything you have. Just to get it on to the next one, maybe kind of bring it back to the spotlight on the dads, and balancing that. But, one of the things of learning how to code is it's constantly, you have to constantly be learning. Coding is always changing. How do you find the time to really balance all of that? I mean, you guys are almost superheroes of finding time to work, parent, learn. What's that like? How do you find the time to do all that? Maybe I'll start with Matt.
That's my period basically after work, I would say. So after noon, when I leave work, that's when I'm like trying to dabble in other stuff, which is my me time kind of thing. So there's a little decompressing period, and then I'll start looking at Vue, React, things like that, and try to expand the horizon a little bit at a time. But it also definitely helps that the kids are in school and I've got some me time and not like just putting fires everywhere. But yeah, having the kids at school, it's great.
Rob, would you like to chime in? Do you happen to have that benefit of the kids at school yet?
Nope. We have help, and we're very fortunate to be able to do that. Yeah, the thing that for me is Learn is very much designed to get you on the train, right? Like the train of a tech career, like get your foot in the door, get you started. You're not going to learn everything you could possibly need to know as a software developer at Learn or anywhere else ever until you quit doing it, right? Like there will always be something more to learn. But because of that, software development careers are designed to be active learning careers, right? Most companies have room for conferences, they have room for training, they have room for like buying books and courseware and that kind of thing. Like those are tools that you're expected to need and time that you're expected to take, right? Like even as a consultant billing hourly, if I spend 4 or 5 hours learning a technique in order to implement it in 15 minutes or an hour, like that's all billable time under my project, right? Like I don't just only bill the 1 hour. So at the end of the day, I think that once you get started in it, then you can get paid to do that learning, which makes it fit nicely into the workday, and doesn't have to require every minute of your extra time. So I think that they're, but that first run, like getting started at, something like Learn, like, yeah, it takes a lot of effort, but that's the other thing is making it a 9 to 5 makes it a little more, I don't know, easy to explain to the people that you're going to need to support you to get through it, right? And say, like, I am gone like I am at a job, because I am, until I get home from my Learn day, right? Like, and that can really help make the difference between something that almost happens or like never happens, because you're really getting fully immersed in it.
Maybe just to follow up on that real quick, Rob, where do you find time in your day to learn, or how do you like kind of push your skills to the next level? Do you have a process for that?
Of course I have a process for it. So at Notch 8, we bill a 32-hour week. We don't bill a 40-hour week. So every Friday is dedicated to sharpening your tools, whether that's updating your computer or learning new things. There are times we do team learning activities. Like all of that is all kind of at that Friday is very much dedicated to that time. So there's that. Like I said, I read really voraciously, and so like I learn a lot just by reading articles and that kind of thing. The trend that started, probably almost 16 years ago now, of everything being a video only drives me crazy. Like I want the transcript because I can just read it. I don't want to have to watch it. So like there's that for me. I do listen to podcasts while I'm hanging out with the kids sometimes, let them run around and climb all over me and listen to somebody explain the latest like methodologies for doing JavaScript and Rails. Like that's perfectly reasonable like thing to do. So, and then I pick a language every year because I'm pretty heavily introverted. And so around the holidays, things get really crazy and like there's a lot of intense family time. So I pick a new programming language that I want to learn every year in about mid-November and like carve a little time out around the holidays to like study up the new language. We usually take the last week of the year off at Notch 8. And so I'll take a couple days to sneak away and have some like introverted time because I have to for work, right? Like, and my parents can understand that where they would never understand. I just don't want to actually talk to other humans right now, right? So I've been doing that for a really long time.
I can only imagine how many programming languages you have under your belt now. Is there a number?
How many languages do I know? I don't know. I really don't. There's a couple of them I've had to learn a couple times because if you don't do them often, they completely change. JavaScript's brand new every 2 years. Like everything about it's different every 2 years. So I've done that one a few times in various forms. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's more than 10.
What was the last one you learned?
So last year, December 2020, I actually relearned Go for the second time. One, Go hadn't actually changed that much, so it was relatively easy to relearn. And at the end of 2020, I felt like I deserved a layup. Didn't really feel a strong need to present myself with new and additional difficult challenges. Like I felt like if we got through 2020, that just surviving was good enough. But also a lot of the DevOps tools are written in Go now. More and more like Docker, all that stuff is all written in Go. And so I wanted to have a good foundation.
Very cool. Guerrero, is there anything maybe you're learning right now, or where do you find time to sharpen your skills, balancing a family?
So before I got into software development, I did freelance like graphic design with my friends. So we did like logos for businesses, banners, all that sort of stuff. So I'm already used to making time aside from my full-time job. Because before I was working a full-time job, I'd go to sleep at like 2 in the morning and then wake up for work at 5 again, Monday through Friday. So again, like I was already conditioned for that. I put a hold on all of that because since January I've just been focusing on code. And it's a lot harder with the baby because she requires a lot of time. But I just keep looking forward. And I mean, pretty soon she's going to be old enough to where she can crawl on her own. I can put her in a little corner in the room and she'll just play by herself. So in the meantime, you kind of just have to like thug it out and just like, okay, it's going to, it's only for a short amount of time. It's only for a short amount of time. At the moment, just anytime I get, I start learning. Like I said, there's this free code camp is what I'm doing right now. So they have courses on there where you can get certificates. And that's kind of what I've been working on for the last few weeks. And just anytime I put her down for bed, I just hop on the laptop. And then as soon as she wakes up, I pause and I go back to her. And then, yeah, like last night, I was up to about 3:30 just updating my portfolio. So for Sarah, like I built my portfolio during the cohort. I completely changed it so it looks a lot more professional. It looks really nice. So I stayed up, like I said, till 3:30 in the morning just working on that. But it's fun. So sometimes like I didn't want to go to sleep until it was done. Just because I was like, okay, this has to be done. Like I'm having so much fun or whatever. But yeah, just any chance I get, I just hop on the laptop. And my wife understands. Like I said, we have those conversations where we look at it as an investment. Because once you start getting that developer money, yeah.
I think that's a good word that you chose, investment. You know, it is, you know, it's an investment in your time, but you know, the reward is definitely comes out in the end. So we are rounding the tail end here. So if you have any final questions, please don't be afraid to gather those up. We have time for just a few more. I'll do one more on our end. You know, we'd like to know, you know, what do you guys like to do as a family outside of work? What are your favorite things to do? Do you guys like to go hiking, outdoors? What does family time look for you guys outside of work? Guerrero, do you want to round us out?
Well, before COVID, and then now we just started this month, but barbecuing every Sunday. Like I go outside and I grill, or we go to the beach and grill every weekend. We just barbecuing. I love company, and this little fun fact about me is like I'm a really good cook. Like I love to cook. It's another one of my hobbies. So I love cooking for people and then seeing their expression when they bite into it. So I'm always inviting my family over, always inviting friends over, cooking something crazy for them, and then just staring at them while, you know, they're eating it. But yeah, as a family, just grilling. We've been going for walks lately too. But that's pretty much it so far. Aside from like watching movies together and all that other regular stuff.
Matt, how about yourself? What does family time look like for you?
I mean, it's watching movies, building Legos with Lincoln. Like I've you can see the collection behind. But yeah, it's usually just like being with each other. And it could be outside. We can go for walks, maybe the park and things like that. It's just I would say COVID got us like so together that now it's like we're starting to spread apart just to have our own space, because it was a year. So yeah, but it's sometimes we force the kids to like watching TV together and things like that. But yeah, just the basic things. And we're gonna go to France, so this is what we're doing. So yeah.
Well, I remember building Legos with my dad, so that's awesome. Rob, how about yourself? What does family time look like for you and the Kaufman?
My kids love to swim, so we're in the pool a lot, especially during the summer. Like that's a big thing. I thought Ruby was really obsessed with being in the water, but Oliver is even more so. What's funny is Ruby doesn't care how cold the pool is. Like she could be turning blue, and she's like, no, Dad, I'm not cold, right? Like she just wants to stay in. Oliver, if it's like anything less than the perfect temperature, he's out. He's not interested at all. But he loves to swim if it's warm enough. So we do a lot of that, and then you know they're fun. Like I am really really physical with them. Like I want them both to be really comfortable in their bodies, and so much to their mother's chagrin, like we're always like jumping off of things and hanging upside down from dad, and like you know all that stuff. Like I definitely keep Chelsea's heart healthy by giving it lots of good starts. So
yeah,
Well,
we
go ahead.
got a rule at our house. It's if you can go up, you can come down. And if you want to learn to go up, you learn to go up. But I'm not helping you down. And now the kids are like climbing our front yard tree like crazy. And they're just enjoying that. So yeah.
Well, this has been an awesome event. I really appreciate all of you guys joining us. Before we close on out, I'll give you guys just maybe one more opportunity. Last any advice, last words you'd like to share?
You said, TJ, you had said there's a couple of people that were gonna start learn or had just started learn.
Yeah, so we have a couple of I believe 3 three of us, Raul, Yan, and Chris. I believe. Well, I know Raul and Yan, I believe, are current students, and then I believe Austin and Chris are deciding.
One of the things, advice that I would give you guys is just focus on whatever you guys are working on at the moment, because I know it's hard to not focus on, okay, where am I going to be in a few months because I'm switching careers? Am I going to have a job or not? This and that. Just focus on whatever it is you guys are learning at the moment, because at Learn, they make time for all of that. So you have that PD week, where professional development week, where they're helping you build your resume, all that stuff. So you don't have to worry about none of that at the moment. Just trying to learn as much as you can, or just try to learn how to learn. So that way, after you're done with the program, you can keep learning. But yeah, just stop worrying about so much about what's up ahead, because I mean, there's a guaranteed internship and whatnot. So as long as you're doing what you have to do, so just focus on learning.
Rob, Matt, and the last pieces of advice?
Yeah, enjoy the journey. Enjoy the future family that you're gonna have, because this is just like a tiny portion of the Learn family, and how much people help each other with code, with everything. Like it's just the alumni are there for you guys if you have any questions, if you have anything, and just really, really embrace that journey that is gonna make you better.
I will say that the biggest indicator of success is, and measuring success is like how quickly you get a job that you love after Learn, right? Like that's kind of an easy success metric. It is not which one of you is the best coder. And about midway through the class, you get to a place where you can probably line everybody up within one or two of like coding skill. Like it becomes really clear. Like there's, maybe there's one person who's just a natural at it, some other people that struggle a little more. And it can be really terrifying, right? Like to see that. That's not what's going to determine who's going to get a job first. It's about hustle. The person who's a fearless self-promoter, the person who makes a good contact at some sort of networking event, and then has the bravery to ask if someone will meet with them and be their mentor, those are the people that get the jobs the fastest. It's we think of computer programming and web development as being this like online only thing, but a lot of it is still person-to-person interaction. Most jobs come from someone you know or have met, right? Like that's just generally true, and that remains even more true now, right? If I put a job posting up, I might get 400 applicants in 2 days, right? Like I don't know how to comb through that, but if I know somebody, like that's definitely a much easier hiring process. And so be aware of that, and that hustle really has a big impact. And we see it over and over and over again. The folks that are out there pacing themselves, like don't burn yourself out trying to job hunt. Job hunt is hard, right? But the folks that are out there pacing themselves, making it happen, are the ones that get the results. And the ones that don't try, or maybe put in one application, like, oh, I love this company, I only want to work at this company, and then wait and wait and wait, those are the ones that take a lot longer.
Well, all fabulous pieces of advice, all awesome conversations here today. So I really appreciate the three of you joining us today. It's been a really great time. And to all of our guests joining us today, I really appreciate you guys spending the time with us. It's been a really fun conversation here. Just a couple last things to close us out here. We are recording this, so if you want to watch it again, we're going to post it on our YouTube channel. We also have a really great opportunity to code this weekend. So if you aren't signed up already, we are doing a 1-day mini jumpstart. So this is a 1-day coding bootcamp prep class that we have, 6 hours long. I believe Sarah might be teaching it. Is that correct? Yes, great. So Sarah will be there. And then we also have our next cohort starting in 12 days. Raul, yeah, we're really excited. We're going to have pretty much close to a full class, if not a full class. So it's going to be a really awesome experience. And then for Chris and Austin, thank you guys for joining us. I'm going to send out some follow-up about the other events that we have going on all through July and August. Our next cohort is starting in September. So if you're looking to join one of our upcoming classes, we're going to get you ready with all the technical skills from, you know, what is coding all the way to deploying your first website to the internet. So we want to help you guys all the way through your coding journey. Oh, Chris, I apologize. I did not see that you were already enrolled. Bravo. So we are excited to, glad that you would join us. I didn't see your last name there. My apologies. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. It was great to have you here. And we'll see you guys all later. So please reach out if you have any questions, and have a great rest of your evening. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.